Good morning and good afternoon, and I guess good evening, according to wherever you are in the world. It's 6:30 a.m. here in Portugal, mainland Europe. What time is it where you are, Rick?
Precisely 1:30 p.m.
Oh, so a more respectable time, I have to say. Um, so I'd like to welcome you wherever you are, listening in to us from afar. And I'd also like to welcome my good friend Rick Pursell back into the studio. So, how are you doing, Rick?
I'm doing very well, and it's always a pleasure to be here. And I'm very honored and thankful that
Oh,
you come and rescue me every week.
well, it's mutual, seriously. So we were talking about mindfulness. So that's the idea for today. And I've been messing around with titles, trying to make our titles a bit more powerful. I've been learning a little bit about YouTube recently, and apparently we need to make the reading age of the titles much easier for people. That's what I'm
Ah,
learning, like making it a little bit more direct. And actually, in doing so, we've changed from I can't even remember what our original one was, but we're going with what is mindfulness and how to develop powerful mastery. Um, so let's take a step through that. If you are listening in, let us know. I can see I've got a comment in the chat room already from Bonnie Basford. Good morning. Where are you? Let us know, Bonnie. Welcome and thank you for joining us. So, Rick, where should we start? What is mindfulness?
what is mindfulness?
Yeah,
Actually, it's a bit of a misnomer in a way because in lots of ways we're endeavoring to clear our mind and quieten our mind. We will never get rid of it. We'll never silence it completely.
uh-huh.
But when we say mindful, that's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. We want to try and quieten the mind. But
Yes,
it's a statement that's been made. It's a label, so we can stick with that.
yeah,
Mindfulness to me is being aware of what you're doing when you're doing it.
right.
Right? So it's very
Yeah,
easy to be brushing your teeth or having a shower and you're already in the office or you're on the way to work or you're already in the future or in the past
mhm.
and missing that beautiful warm water and the fragrance of the soap and the shampoo. Not in my case, of course, but other people might enjoy it. So, and we're eating, we're being very mindful of what we're eating and the whole process of it instead of just looking at your device, scrolling with one hand through Instagram and stuffing food in our mouth in the other.
Yeah.
So mindfulness is becoming aware or conscious of what you're doing when you're doing it.
That's a fantastic description. And like you, I've also thought it was a bit of a misnomer because I was thinking, how can mindfulness? It looks like I've lost you already. So in fact, while I'm
Possibly.
waiting, oh, there you are. You're coming back. Your face hasn't changed. I can hear you. Oh, there you are. There's your face. You
Could
did
you
one of
hear
those.
me?
I could just hear you. Um,
Right.
Our friend Bonnie has just revealed her alter ego, her real name. I won't reveal it on screen because she's coming under a different alias. So I'm guessing
Oh,
I'm guessing this is somebody who doesn't maybe want her name on YouTube, and that's fine. But anyway, Bonnie, it's lovely to be connected with you. And thank you for joining us. Let us know about what you think mindfulness is. I like your description, being aware, being in awareness, and you've already brought up the idea of being present as opposed to being in the past or being in the future.
mm,
Now
yes.
that's an interesting one because, like, right from word go, we're kind of encouraged, I think, by society, like our I mean, is it society? Is it our education? Is it TV? Like you mentioned, Instagram. I don't use it very much, if at all. Um, all these things are just like taking us out of our present the whole damn day, and it
Yes.
seems that it's happening more and more and more. So,
Yes.
like, what's going on there? Do you think? Is it a
Well,
deliberate distraction, or is it something that we're creating for ourselves?
I think, well, there's no separateness from who's doing it and us, but
Yeah.
I think it's all very carefully orchestrated.
Uh-huh.
And to me, I'm going to say this out loud. I
Do.
believe currently we're going through a war on consciousness.
Yeah.
That is that there is orchestrated effort to keep us dumbed down, to keep us obedient, to keep us robotically following what the narrative and the propaganda is saying.
Yeah.
So and as many as distractions as you can provide will keep people from actually critically thinking about what's really going on behind the scenes here.
Mm.
Instead of just seeing the facade that is very obvious, what's sitting behind that, and why
Yeah.
are we being distracted? Right.
That's
So
a good question, isn't it? I'm writing all
it
this down.
is. It's
Yeah.
so easy to be distracted. We have YouTube, we have Facebook. How many likes did I get on Facebook?
Yeah.
Will I get a dopamine hit on this next one? Maybe a Doberman would be better. Right? All of these things become addictive. If we
Mm.
have trauma in our life, we will look for something that will give us comfort. And so we seek those things out. It could be food, it could be sex, it could be work, it could be Britain's Got Talent, it could be anything, right? And that then becomes the addictive behavior, which prevents us from actually questioning, well, what's going on behind the scenes here? And
Yes.
it takes us further away from who we are, because they're nearly all wrapped up in consumerism or materialism or the solidity of our world,
Mm.
instead of who we really are behind all of that, who we are behind the mask, what is our true identity. So that's my read on it. I think human beings, a bulk of human beings, have become addicted to these distractions because they certainly do give comfort.
Yes, they do. And I really like your how you've articulated that in terms of like, why are we being distracted? What's really going on behind the scenes? Because you then sort of brought it down to the level of trauma. Like when we feel trauma, when we feel the discomfort of trauma, we are actively seeking something to distract ourselves, or we're now in the habit of actively distracting ourselves. I'm guessing if we didn't have those distractions, we might actually face our trauma, mightn't we?
Yes, and we might become healed
Yeah,
and more
funny
conscious as a result of that.
that. No, yes, I see that very clearly because, yeah, if we become healed, then we have no need for anyone to supervise us, or we have no obvious need to be controlled if we heal
Exactly.
ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. I love that.
And it
Uh,
leads to empowerment.
yes.
Right?
Yes, of
The,
course.
the distraction is disempowering,
Yeah.
and the distraction is putting something between us and who we really are.
Yes.
So the more healing we do, the inner journey that we do, the self-directed inquiry, the more empowering we become, and we still then can stand in our sovereignty, be unaffected by what's going on,
Yeah.
seeing through the illusions that are painted for us,
Yeah.
and living a more authentic, real life instead
Yeah.
of the illusionary life that is based around fame, fortune, popularity,
Yeah.
all of that. So,
Yes. And as Bonnie's adding, we had lovely little she's commenting a lot. I think she's saying, hey, it's been my name has been changed by a certain somebody in her family. It's very confusing to have it changed back. But she's saying, so we can protect our true authentic selves.
was that a
Yes.
question, Bonnie, or was it a statement?
Yeah, yes, Bonnie. That's a good point. I really like the words "protect our true authentic selves." I was a little bit glamorized by that, so I was like, "Ooh, that's nice." Yeah. So if we were to deal with our trauma, that would lead to empowerment. And we would know who we really are. We'd be able to stand in our sovereignty and be capable of self-directed inquiry. And of course, if we're not in that position, then we are not in self-empowerment. We're not in our sovereignty, which means that somebody else has sovereignty over us, or we are open to being influenced and sort of like willing to be sort of like pushed in a path away from our true authentic selves.
Yes. In fact, manipulated.
Yes, manipulated. A very good word. I like the cut of your jib there, definitely. And actually, if we think about it, since the sort of advent of social media, this is happening exponentially on a faster and faster basis.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, our children have grown up in a world where social media was already here, haven't they?
Yes, that's right. And look at the influence and the influencers of
Yes.
Facebook and TikTok and all the social media activities that have just grown exponentially,
Yeah.
because it is giving some form of connection,
Yeah.
albeit through, but it is drawing people away from what really is the foundation of life. And
Yeah.
that is to uncover who we are and to live in that sovereignty, into that authenticity, instead of the shallowness of a few likes here and there, or some inane gestures on TikTok, or meaningless gestures that are getting kids caught up in fashion and movements and ideologies that leading them further away from their own truth.
Yeah.
So it's
discovering who they are free of that influence, how they might evolve. I love that. Bonnie's saying, let's come away from social media and thinking about where we go and how influences may affect us. Yeah, so we're all singing from the same song sheet here. And yet I also recognize that as damaging as it can be, it's also the vehicle for many of us to awaken, isn't it?
in a lot of ways, and also
go on.
Also, to generate an income, because these are portals which can get our messages out, not necessarily only generating income, but to reach a bigger audience.
Yeah.
And I've been on Facebook for about 3 or 4 years. I've just recently gone back on posting on a fairly regular basis because I want to reach a bigger audience with this message. Yeah. The same with I do a daily Instagram post and things like that, which I never did for years. But I feel
you're slowing
down. It's got nothing to do with how many people like it or how many smileys I get. It's just, for me, it's just getting the message out there. And at this stage, there aren't that many other portals to go on that has, the length and breadth of this audience out there. So
and for that I'm truly grateful, really, really grateful, because like my livelihood is built around, I don't earn anything from the videos I do, but essentially it's a shop window, and it's opening a conversation with people as it does with you, and it's connecting, powerfully connecting like minds, which I think is wonderful. So coming back to like, what is mindfulness? If we take the first definition that you've given us, it's mindfulness is being in awareness, which automatically helps us to be empowered, because we're having self-directed inquiry. So how do we do that in this world of distractions?
Say that again. I just broke up just slightly. What was the question again?
How do we get back into, how do we recognize the cost, the true cost of social media, to our level of awareness and beingness? How do we like, for our children, for instance, we we recognize, I mean, our kids are quite small, and we recognize that there is a place for technology. They're growing up in a technological world. And I guess while they're using it in our presence, whilst we're around, we can have conversations about it. So, we allow them to use YouTube, and in fact, YouTube has helped our youngest learn the alphabet and numbers, and he loves it. He's always wanting to be on YouTube. We recognize the dangers, but there are some real benefits. But how do we bring our youngsters who don't remember what it was like before then back into that place of mindfulness? Or how do we, I think it's probably easier for us to remember what it's like to be bored somewhere and all of a sudden be kind of kicked back into yourself. Well, what do we do?
Well, I used to, as you know, I used to run retreats here. And one of the retreats was the mindfulness exercise. And I had 5 elements. We would sit in a circle and we had 5 elements. I'd have a couple of almonds or some nuts. And then I would have some incense. I'd have a Tibetan singing bowl. I would have all of the senses that could be activated. And I'd have people go into a breathing technique and then drop down into their centered and grounded. And then I would go round and play the Tibetan bowl and have them just focus purely on the sound. So their eyes are closed. There's no other distractions. And they're in that beautiful space of meditative space. And then to listen to this sound and hear every innuendo of it, right? And then I would have them eat something. It might be a piece of fruit or a nut or whatever. And I'd have them just hold it in their mouth first, start to chew it, and just be aware of the sensation of taste coming through your tongue, and chew it up into a paste, then swallow it, and be aware of any aftertaste. So this is about a 2-minute exercise, and you can do it with all of the senses. But as we go through it a little bit and people get more familiar with it, and this is wonderful to do with the kids, as they get more familiar, at the end of each one of these 2 minutes, I say, now I want you to just drop into your intuition and sense what you feel about this taste. If it was a nut, can you feel the tree? Can you get a sense of the tree roots in the earth? Can you smell the blossom? Just intuitive. And if they're looking at something, I get them, usually we have these beautiful coconut poles in our meditation hall. I get them to hold this and sense it, but then to close your eyes and put your forehead against the pole and sense that this used to be a coconut tree. See if you can feel and sense the energy of the coconut tree. So we just expanded it, and now we're using our 6 senses. Yeah. And you can do that in half an hour, and kids love it. Most people just thoroughly enjoy it. And what that does is it triggers especially with eating, the opportunity to eat mindfully, not to talk, but to chew the food and sense all of the flavors in it and the textures, and then go back and think about somebody planted this rice in the rice paddy and then watched it grow and came and harvested with the community. They went away with sacks of rice. It went away and got semi-processed. Then it went onto the shelf. Somebody drove to the supermarket and picked it up. Somebody prepared it, and now it's here on your table. And so we're expanding the depth of this eating process. And you can do that with all of the senses. What does that smell remind me of? And if you're in town or something and you walk past a bakery, stop just outside the front door, close your eyes and just smell that fresh bread. Or a coffee shop. Just make the effort to just stop for a moment and just take in whatever it is, whether it's a sunset, the sound of a bird, a child laughing, whatever it is. Just stop whatever you're doing And in that present moment, you become empowered because we're now connecting at a frequency that is in resonance with who we are at the core.
I love that. That's really powerful.
Mhm.
As you were talking about that, I like was feeling the sort of pleasure of eating almonds and connecting with nature. I absolutely adore that.
Yes.
I want to put out a quick question to Bonnie, who I know is listening. I know that Bonnie works in midwifery, and I wonder how consciousness plays out in your experience there, Bonnie. Are there any things that you encourage the mums that are giving birth to do? Because I mean, that is a time when it could be really mindful, and when it could be really sort of distracting, you know, with a medicalized birth around. So I'd really like to hear your thoughts on that. Um,
Mm.
yeah, one of the things Carl, my husband, does with our children, if they get a bit fractious or a little bit over the top, is we immediately stop and we get really close and we talk into their ear and say, you know, like, smell, or, you know, what can you hear right now? And we distract them with their senses to bring them back into their body and away from whatever it is that is taking them from their true self.
Mm.
And I've noticed that has been really, really useful.
Yes. Yes. And what is taking us from our true self is the ego.
Yeah.
And the ego can only be sensed and felt. It wants us in the past or in the future. It
Yeah.
cannot abide being in present time. So you see the value of mindfulness. If you are truly
Yeah.
making every moment a mindful moment, or most of it, right,
Yeah.
then the ego is just pushed out.
Yeah.
It wants
And
it
it will
wants us
fight
to
for
come back.
its supremacy.
It will. But
Yeah.
after a while, the sheer power overrides the fear-based ego and
Mm.
its desire to push us into the past and future. And there's nothing wrong with the past and future. If we want to know how to bake a cake, what was the ingredients I put in it? If I want to plan a trip to Portugal, I need to get in the future and figure out what's the temperature's going to be there, how will we get there, how long will we be, so on and so forth.
Well, you need to
But
also, how can we, like, come and stay with Louisa?
yeah, I'm glad you said that.
We've got a spare room.
Very, very subtle, very subtle.
Yeah, no, I'd love it. I'd love you to visit. Yeah, so just to sort of, like, I loved what you said there, and I want to kind of summarize that because I think it's an important point. So the past and future aren't to be feared. You know, they are places that have their purposes, but we're actually spending most of our time in it. And it's egoic. It's the ego dragging us there so that
Mhm.
we remember the ego. Because you're right, when you are in those peaceful moments in present time, full of appreciation for your senses, or noticing what's going on internally and right outside you, you are being your true self, and you're not being the mask that we all wear. You're not being Rick, I'm not being Louisa, you know, like the personality that other people might know us as. Yes, I'm just trying to apply it to, you know, when our kids are a little bit fractious. And I guess when they are having a tantrum or getting irritated, they are being irritated about something that's just happened in the past. And
Yes.
also imagining what would happen if it persists in the future. They're not being in the present, where we're actually soothing them and helping them to inquire about it themselves.
Yes.
That's very helpful, that definition. Thank
Good.
you.
And their reason, very often they're irritated because the core of the root cause is they've momentarily separated from who they are at the core.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And that's what we get irritated about and upset.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's because we've actually momentarily, or for a long time, have separated from our true identity, our true nature. And everything else is just an embellishment. Everything else is a projection. Oh, you made me upset, or it's all your fault. You know, we project that out. But what at the root cause of it is we've just separated from, we think we have separated from our
Yeah.
core. In fact, it's impossible. It's impossible. But the mind, and now we're getting on to mastering the mind, the mind believes that there is the illusion of separateness and superiority and fear and judgment and all of those things. So we need to roll in concert with mindfulness. That is our practice every day, to be in present time. And there is no, when we're there, the ego is not present. It's not. It's not available to us until we turn into it and allow it to take over. So why would we want to master the mind? It's because preceding all action comes the thought. So the thought is the beginning, and it triggers the emotions and then triggers something in the body. So we need to master this, because the root cause of it, right, is coming back again to the ego, which is a thought about ourselves. I'm not good enough. I'm now judging myself and somebody else. These are all shaped as thoughts, and we have to master those. We have to convert those negative thoughts and limiting beliefs into something of a higher frequency, something more uplifting, something that is more in resonance with who we are as infinite beings of a high frequency vibration, right? And we're allowing the monkey mind to tear us down and pull us down. So mastery of the mind means to be mindful of the quality of your thoughts.
Yes.
Right? Now we can do something about them.
Yes. So I love that. So just to kind of summarize that string, we have the original thought, which leads to the emotions that manifest in our lives or impels us towards action, taking action. But if we're using the wrong thought, or a thought that's not helpful, we'll be emotionally manifesting something in our body. And I'm guessing we've all had disease of some sort, and illness, and we've all done really rash things. It's kind of interesting, because we've been playing around with this at home quite a bit at the moment, between Carl and I, and when we've been focusing on the problems that occur to us in the moment, some of the solutions that come up for us from that just kind of pop out of our mouths are actually quite drastic, or they're not well grounded. Like when we're working on impulse like that, I don't want to like put down impulse, because I think we can actually be quite intuitive and create well-grounded knowing and take action from that. But we've been noticing our thoughts a lot more, and the moment we've gone into these little ruts, we've actually taken a step back and asked what's our bigger picture. We've reconnected to our overall purpose, which we've been very sort of specific about recently. We've been creating a much bigger context for us, our family, our descendants, and our place in the world. And we've really been trying to hone in what it is that is the, I don't know, like what our hearts truly desire for us to be in this world. And so, when we're getting into these little snippy bits with each other, because maybe things aren't moving quite as fast as we would like, we're actually we're having to lengthen our discussion and broaden it and bring ourselves back in. Now, Bonnie's just shared, given that she works in midwifery, I talk about the power of breath and how important it is through the birthing process. And she's also saying that they also have calm down cuddles. I'm guessing that's at home, although maybe when those babies are born, you have those nice soothing cuddles. Yeah. So there's a couple of strategies straight away, isn't there? Like you were talking about noticing the senses and noticing the richness of those senses, and how we are connected to the things that we're sensing. And then Bonnie's talking about the power of breath, which I've also used to bring me back into the moment. And I hugely appreciate it. It's completely free, isn't it? As my friend Tanya says, she says, like we just need to go through life, breath, by breath, and she truly, appreciates the breath. It's her work, and that breath takes us on to the next decision and the next decision. It all seems so simple, doesn't it? And I
It
think that
does.
puts people off.
I think most people think, well, we live in a complicated world. Who's trying to figure out brain science or how the logarithms work and computer science? These are space travel. These are all complicated subjects. And we are sort of put in a situation where only a handful of people, elite sort of people, can know about these things. And the rest of us are there to follow. So things are being made deliberately complex and complicated.
Yes.
And it doesn't appear to be any rational that something could be as simple as that, as simple as breathing. Very conscious and mindful of the breath coming in through the nostrils, expanding the chest, breathing into your diaphragm, sensing the movement of the air going through there. We just take everything for granted.
Yes.
Where a food comes, look at the times when you become mindful, you really realize how much I've taken for granted. In fact, this was one of the lessons that I did for the kids today. They were identifying all the organs in the body and what they did. And I was asking them, what sort of intelligence could create this physical body where you don't even have to think about beating your heart, about expanding and detracting your lungs? All of that's done automatically. What sort of intelligence is behind that? Whereas we just take everything for granted. We get up and, oh, damn, I can't find my sock.
Yeah. Life's got so mundane, haven't they?
Yes. But the sheer simplicity of it is that everything we are looking for outside of us is within us. If only we would look within. Everything, all of our power, all of our sovereignty, all of our love, all of our compassion lies within us. And yet we're scurrying around looking for love, looking for the answers outside of us. And the of it is it's all there. All we need to do is unravel it a little bit. It's there for everybody. And
losing you again. Whilst we're waiting for Rick to come back to us.
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh, you're back. I was whilst you were lost in time to me there a little bit, I was thinking of just like switching off to tune in. We need to, and obviously everything in life is designed to grab your attention, isn't it? And to take you outside of yourself and and to feel insecure, which helps to fuel the ideas of consumerism, doesn't it? Like it's about switching off to turn in. Some other things that occurred to me, like last night I was awake at 2 a.m. and I just remembered how much pleasure I got from stretching. I don't get that much time to do that these days, with the kids jumping on me and whatnot and begging for food. Begging for food, it makes it sound like I starved them, but always it's like, Mom, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. It's like backwards and forwards in between the kitchen and whatever it is I'm doing. So last night I got really conscious of the absolute pleasure of stretching, which I had as a child. I used to get up really early. I used to wake up very early anyway, and I would stretch for a good half an hour, and the pleasure of doing that was immense. And it's really beautiful. And people get that kind of focus and enjoyment when they are in sports or, when they're doing. So again, it's coming back to the body. Something else I used to do, and maybe this sort of describes how kind of weird I am as was a child. But I used to sit down and I would imagine a leaf, and I would imagine my journey inside that leaf. I would imagine that I could shrink down and become that leaf, and I would. It was funny. I had these little different sensations in my body as I felt like my consciousness was merging with that leaf or the blade of grass or whatever it was in front of me, like a stone or some water. And I still really enjoy it. So that's how I maybe escaped. But again, these are all the body, aren't they?
Yes.
Focusing on
Yes.
sensations. Are there any other things that you think we've left off, or any other tips you'd give?
Well, no, just to consciousness. We are this unlimited consciousness. That's what we are. And the more we are in present time, the more we have access to that consciousness. And that will lead, the more consciousness we have, it leads to more wiser and more intelligent behaviors. And the opposite of that is true. The less consciousness that is present will lead to unintelligent, unwise decisions and behaviors. So this is the path to mindfulness and mastering the mind by watching your thoughts, choose the good ones, don't entertain the lower level emotions of blame, shame, regret, fear, grief, all of those. Grieving is good, but don't hold on to it longer than you have to. Just remember that if we want to emulate that which is inside us and all around us, then we have to bring our vibrational frequency up to be able to experience it.
Yeah.
So if we are in a low vibrational frequency of fear and regret and blame and shame and having all these negative thoughts about ourselves, our vibrational frequency within the body, the mind, and the emotions will be trapped down. We have to go beyond that and consciously choose high vibrational emotions, joy, love, happiness, creativity, watching our thoughts, making them very positive and uplifting thoughts and life-enhancing thoughts. And then now we're lifting our vibrational frequency in a match with both the earth and the universe and anything else in between.
Yes. Yes. And when you do match in with the universe and everything else in between, you hear it, don't you?
Indeed.
And in the same way that you and I and Bonnie, who's listening, and all the other people that are listening in today, we probably all remember what it's like to lie on grass and actually feel the connection to the Schumann resonance. I used to actually feel there's a sense of relaxation that you get that we don't really get so much when we lie on grass in areas that are heavily bombarded with technology, like the competing Wi-Fi's and things like that. So that, actually feeling the energy of the earth was something we used to be able to do. Which is why when we go camping or, go out into the wilderness, we feel so much calmer, right?
Yes. And taking your shoes off and walking on the grass and along the beach on the sand. And, my lifestyle here, I rarely wear shoes because I don't go out that much. And the moment we put some rubber between us, we're insulating ourselves from the earth. So barefoot on the rocks and the sand and the grass as much as possible, and inside the house. As you know, you've lived in Bali, everybody parks their shoes and flip-flops outside the door and walks around barefoot. Well, that's my day every day. And that's the grounding that we need to have. And again, that's in vibrational frequency with Mother Earth. So
and
that's the simplicity of it.
Yes, and you're right. Like the body remembers to stay connected, doesn't it? That it's our natural state to be connected.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I absolutely have really enjoyed this conversation, which has taken us from what is mindfulness, which in many respects is a war on consciousness. I really liked where we started there. It's about being in awareness, and of course our lives are now heavily predicated on us escaping our reality and being distracted from it so that we don't have to experience our trauma therefore heal from it and be empowered. So when we're being distracted, we're disempowering ourselves. I love it. And we've come up with some great strategies for sort of like reconnecting that actually cost us nothing, take us not very much time. And we don't need to get a new app for it, or we don't need to upgrade to feel consciousness necessarily. And I am grateful for all those wonderful apps that do kind of remind us, but it's actually a lot more simple than that. Wonderful. Yes. Well, thank you so much today, Rick.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone that's contributed today, mainly Bonnie, but I can see we've had other people watching us and no doubt having their own experience of being present and also distracted. Yeah, so I look forward to seeing everybody another time, connecting again. What should we focus on next time we talk, Rick?
No idea.
No idea. So we'll just tune in and see what comes up. And of course, if there's something that you'd like us to talk about, then please do drop me a message. It's louisa.tannermunson@gmail.com, or you can contact Rick. Is that okay, Rick? Before
yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
Seems you deliberately pushed me into the future there.
I didn't know. In fact, everyone in the future. Isn't that awful?
So we're going to be talking about no ideas, nothing.
Yeah, no ideas. Well, actually, that's the way of thinking. Isn't that kind of good?
Yeah, 30 minutes of silence.
I like that idea. Right. All right. On that bombshell, I'm going to go and chill out and have a bit of calm before all of my children wake up and
very good.
and it gets shattered into a million pieces. So see you next week. Thanks for joining us wherever you are in the world. We love you very much.
Thank you, Louisa. Thank you, everybody. Ciao.